I'm the surviving victim of a shooting that tragically took the lives of my mother and sister at the hands of my father during the 4th of July.
On July 3rd, 2023, Karina Gonzalez made what she thought was the right decision. She had a legal protection order. She had moved out. She had done everything the system told her to do. 2 weeks later, she was dead. Welcome to Crime Chronicle, and today we explore into the case of Karina Gonzalez case. Kindly follow if you are just meeting us for the first time, and don't forget to click on the notification bell. What happened in those final moments would expose a deadly flaw in our justice system that continues to claim lives today. Chicago's little village neighborhood was quiet that Monday evening. Karina Gonzalez, a 48-year-old mother of 3, had been trying to rebuild her life. For years, she had endured what friends and family would later describe as an increasingly volatile marriage to Jose Alvarez. But something had changed in June 2023. Something that made Karina realize she couldn't stay silent anymore. 15 days before her death, Karina had walked into a courthouse and done what countless domestic violence experts recommend. She obtained an emergency order of protection against her husband. The legal document was clear. Jose Alvarez was to have no contact with his wife. He was ordered to stay away from their home, from their children, from Karina herself. Karina packed her belongings and moved in with family members. Her children, 15-year-old Daniela and her younger son Manny, stayed with relatives too. They were following the safety plan. They were doing everything right. But there was something the protection order couldn't protect them from. Something that remained in Jose Alvarez's possession despite the legal restrictions. What investigators didn't know was that while the order of protection had been filed, while Karina had moved out, while she had taken every recommended precaution, her husband still had access to the one thing that would make those protections meaningless. In Illinois, like many states, obtaining a protection order doesn't automatically trigger the removal of firearms from the accused person's possession. That process requires a separate legal action, additional paperwork, additional time. Time that Karina Gonzalez didn't have. Because on July 3rd, 2023, Jose Alvarez would prove that a piece of paper, no matter how official, cannot stop a bullet. The call came in at 6:47 p.m. Multiple gunshots fired in a residential building on the 2400 block of South Washtenaw Avenue. Chicago police raced to the scene, but what they found would haunt even the most experienced officers. Karina Gonzalez lay dead from multiple gunshot wounds. Beside her, her 15-year-old daughter Daniela had also been fatally shot. Their son Manny, wounded but alive, had somehow survived the attack. But investigators didn't know was how Jose Alvarez had managed to get to his family. The first clue came from witness statements. Neighbors reported seeing Alvarez in the area earlier that day, despite the protection order explicitly forbidding his presence. He had somehow tracked down where Karina and the children were staying. What they discovered next would reveal the fatal gap in the system designed to protect domestic violence victims. Jose Alvarez had used a handgun, a weapon he legally possessed before the protection order was filed. Illinois law at the time required a separate court hearing to remove firearms from someone subject to a protection order. That hearing hadn't happened yet. Court records show that while Karina had successfully obtained the emergency protection order on June 18th, the process to remove her husband's access to firearms was still working its way through the legal system. The paperwork was filed. The wheels were in motion. But bureaucracy moves slowly and danger moves fast. Investigators pieced together what happened that Monday evening. Alvarez had confronted his wife and children at their temporary residence. Arguments escalated. But this time, unlike the verbal disputes and threats that had prompted Karina to seek legal protection, Jose Alvarez had brought a gun. The protection order that was supposed to keep him away had failed. The legal system that was supposed to remove his weapon access had failed. And now, 2 innocent lives were lost. But what investigators found in the aftermath would shock them even more. In Cook County alone, there were nearly 30,000 outstanding cases of people whose firearm licenses had been revoked, but who likely still possessed guns. Thousands of domestic violence victims were living under the same false sense of security that had cost Karina and Daniela their lives. The numbers were staggering. In homes where domestic violence occurs, the presence of a gun increases the risk of homicide by 500%. Between 2019 and 2023, Illinois had seen a 63% increase in gun-related domestic violence deaths. Karina Gonzalez had done everything the system asked of her. She had sought help. She had obtained legal protection. She had removed herself from danger. What she couldn't remove was the danger from her husband's hands. Friends and family remember Karina Gonzalez as a devoted mother who worked tirelessly to provide for her children. She had dreams for Daniela, who has just started her sophomore year of high school. She worried about Manny, who was younger and looked up to his big sister. Those who knew her said Karina had been planning to file for divorce. She had been documenting incidents of abuse, building a case not just for her protection, but for custody of her children. She was fighting not just to escape, but to build a future. Jose Alvarez was arrested at the scene and charged with first-degree murder, attempted murder, and aggravated battery. He pleaded not guilty, claiming the shootings were in self-defense, a claim that investigators found no evidence to support. But the real tragedy wasn't just in that little village apartment. It was in the system that had failed to connect the dots between a protection order and firearm removal. Karina's case sparked immediate action. Domestic violence advocates used her story to push for legislative change. They argued that protection orders without firearm removal were essentially worthless pieces of paper when dealing with armed abusers. The result was Karina's Law, legislation signed by Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker that requires immediate removal of firearms when emergency protection orders are issued. The law went into effect on Mother's Day, 2025, a symbolic date chosen to honor mothers like Karina who lost their lives seeking protection from abuse. Amanda Pyron, who worked with Karina's family to pass the legislation, said something that captures the heartbreak of this case. An emergency order of protection is often the first step out of a violent relationship, but it can also be the most dangerous step. For Karina Gonzalez, it was the last step she would ever take. Today, Jose Alvarez awaits trial. Manny, the surviving son, is being raised by extended family members who are working to heal from trauma no child should ever experience. Karina's Law represents hope, a chance that other families won't face the same tragedy. But it also serves as a reminder of how many Karinas came before and how the gap between getting a protection order and actually being protected can be measured in lives lost. If this case reminds us of anything, it's that sometimes the most dangerous moment in an abusive relationship isn't when you stay, it's when you try to leave. And our systems need to be ready for that moment. And don't forget to subscribe to Crime Chronicles that expose the darkness hiding behind closed doors. In our next episode, we'll explore another case where legal protections failed to prevent tragedy,